All right. Looks like we're live. Hello, everyone. It looks like we are live. Yes, we are live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. All right. So, welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Whoever's on live and whoever is watching the replay, welcome as well. I'm Eileen Cohen. I'm the owner and founder of Refresh Exams LLC. We provide tutoring and test preparation for dietetics board exams, including the RD, the CNSC, and the CDCS exam. And today we have a very special guest, Kristen Santamaria from Dotted Lines Company, and she is going to be doing an awesome presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, let her introduce herself, and here we go. Kristen.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Eileen, for having me in. I've been really looking forward to this. So hello to everyone who is watching the live stream. And like Eileen said, welcome anyone watching the recording as well. But today we're going to dive into all things scope of practice and other kind of big legal must-knows for RDs and our private practice. And then we're also going to kind of touch on what you can be doing as an RD2B to kind of get started growing your practice. But this is by far one of our most frequently asked questions, how to kind of navigate scope of practice issues, how to go about handling all 50 state nutrition laws and licensing issues. So we're really excited to talk to you guys about this today and hope that you really walk with a lot of clarity and confidence as to how to approach this in your business, because luckily it does not have to be super complicated. And we love just kind of seeing you step into the CEO role with handling issues like this in your business. So I will also mention we're going to save time at the end for Q&A. But if you have any questions as we go through, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will just kind of keep those handy for the end of the presentation, but definitely feel free to put them in at any time. So I'll just do a quick introduction of myself. So I run Dotted Lines. This is me along with my co-founder and very best friend, Kelly, who's also an attorney. She couldn't be here today, but she sends her hellos. But for a little bit of background on me and my experience, so I practiced law for about 10 years at a large international law firm. There, I worked with all different kinds of entrepreneurs, so all different industries, but really from small startups to large Fortune 100 companies, helping them, everything from drafting their contracts to protecting their businesses, forming their legal entities. So really everything we do here at Dotted Lines, but for many different industries. And then after many years of working there, I kind of ran into my own health issues, really, that kind of catapulted me into the world of health and wellness and nutrition. And I really dove into the space head on after really not getting anywhere with kind of conventional medical treatments for this fertility journey we were dealing with, and just completely fell in love with the nutrition space and with the coaching space, and knew that I wanted to kind of help the cause of health and wellness professionals in some way. And after becoming a nutritional therapy practitioner, getting that certification myself, I realized that there was just a huge need for really tailored legal contracts and legal education to the health and wellness space. And so that's where I teamed up with Kelly, my longtime best friend, to form Dotted Lines. But I feel so passionately about the work you guys do. While kind of going through our own health issues, I worked with a registered dietitian one-on-one. I took online courses from different health coaches and nutritionists. So it was really kind of you guys who changed my life in a big way. But we absolutely love serving you through Dotted Lines. So with that, I'll give a quick disclaimer. So we do want you to know that although Kelly and I are both licensed attorneys in the state of Texas, we are not your attorney. So nothing in this presentation or anything we do at Dotted Lines is legal advice, and it does not create an attorney-client relationship. So everything we do here is really for education and to empower you to feel confident in the legal side of your business. So if you have a specific legal question for, related to your business, we do always recommend that you consult with an attorney in your local jurisdiction. But with that, we are going to go ahead and dive in. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, we're going to dive into what exactly is scope of practice. We're going to talk about the types of laws that govern scope of practice. We'll also go into how you can navigate licensing and nutrition laws if you are a registered dietitian. Like I mentioned, we're going to also talk about if you are an RD2B, how you can start growing your business now, and then kind of touch on our 3 legal essentials to protect your business. So before we get any further, we always like to kind of offer a mindset shift at the beginning of our presentations because we know legal issues and especially scope of practice issues can be complex, but really our goal here is to simplify it for you. So if you have any questions or if you are watching the recording and you have questions, we can definitely help direct you to some resources we have, but you can feel free to email us at support@dotedlinesco.com. We really want to kind of be your partner in helping you get the education you need to feel confident in the legal aspects of your business. And then also just know that understanding scope of practice, just like anything else legal in your business, is really a foundational piece of your business. So having that kind of strong legal foundation can just help you get the peace of mind and confidence you need to get your message out there and help as many people as you possibly can. So, we love to kind of kick things off with a meme. So just to kind of keep things lighthearted. So we really love this meme because it kind of shows what we hope to do here at Dotted Lines, whether it be issues like scope of practice or helping you with your contracts. If you kind of feel like the current state of your legal affairs or your understanding of state nutrition laws is a little bit like the Justin Bieber in this picture, we can definitely help you kind of transform to really calm, confident, and polished. We like to say it's like a big glow up to get your legal ducks in a row and look a little bit more like Haley here. So love to kind of use that analogy. So, but with that, we're going to dive in. So kind of first just wanted to open up with what is scope of practice, make sure we all are kind of on the same page of exactly what we're talking about here. So scope of practice really serves to make clear the activities that an individual is authorized to perform. So this can be what we're going to talk about a lot today. A lot of times these are laws that are enacted by state legislatures that talk about what certain people or certain professions can do under the scope of their professional licensure in a state. And then these are going to be most of the times monitored by state licensing boards. So just kind of keep that in mind. We get questions over kind of who's in charge of keeping track of this or who's in charge of monitoring these things. So that is generally going to be the state licensing boards that do monitor for these things from time to time. So just to kind of set the stage in terms of how many different types of scope of practice there is when it comes to the health and nutrition fields, because there are a lot, we kind of want to just go over like what are all the different types of practitioners in these fields. So of course, you have your medical doctor, you have you guys, registered dietitians, you may be a CNS, you may be some other type of non-licensed nutritionist, like a nutritional therapy practitioner. There are coaches, there are mental health therapists, or physical therapists. So we know a lot of times, when we're talking to people about nutrition or wellness, it can kind of touch on a lot of different fields. So we just wanted to remind you that these different types of practices, different types of practitioners do many times have different types of scopes that are defined in state laws, particularly when this comes to medical doctors, of course, registered dietitians in most states, mental health therapists and physical therapists as well. So that is just kind of helpful to set the stage. So there's more than just the state nutrition laws to worry about. There's kind of these other fields just to keep in mind as well. So kind of why do we care about scope of practice? Why is it important? So of course, when it comes to making sure that you feel confident you're operating within your scope, there are ethical considerations that come into that, right? So of course, you're going to want to avoid harming a client or harming a customer by providing services that you aren't trained to provide, you don't have the education or the requisite background to provide, sound advice or sound recommendations to them in that area. So of course, there are going to be some ethical considerations. There are also just licensing considerations. So like we're going to dive into, there are many different types of laws that govern, govern nutrition and govern the practice of nutrition. And there are different state laws for all 50 states. So something fun about being here in the US, luckily this doesn't have to be too difficult to navigate, but you want to make sure that you are not violating those laws, because there could be, you could be subject to loss of your licensure if you are someone who is licensed. You could also be subject to fines and penalties for violating these things, because they are going to be misdemeanors. And then there are, liability considerations to take into account as well. So let's say that you had a client or a customer sue you for something in your business. Let's just say that you gave them a recommendation that maybe didn't go as planned, or maybe they didn't disclose to you updates in their medication or whatever it may be. And something were to happen and they were to sue you. If you are acting outside the scope of your practice, it would be more likely that a court could find that your actions were negligent and impose legal liability on you if you are acting outside the scope of your practice. So just super important to make sure that you have a really good game plan in place for tackling these issues. It definitely does not need to be super complex, but we want to really empower you guys to dive into these laws yourself. We can point you to helpful resources, but know that this is really a foundational piece and something we see a lot of people kind of get hung up on because they are worried about how to proceed, and they kind of second guess themselves and maybe don't proceed with full confidence in their business, which is definitely not something we want for you all. So, kind of what are the big scopes? The primary ones we want to make sure we are aware of. So, of course, there is the scope of practice of medicine, right? So it is a felony to commit the unauthorized practice of medicine. And there are some actions that are reserved exclusively for medical doctors in the practice of medicine. So, of course, it's going to be things like diagnosing a condition or disease, treating a condition or disease, prescribing medications to treat a condition or disease, even like specific protocols to do that. I will do a little asterisk here that we will talk about medical nutrition therapy in just a second. And then, also healing or curing any kind of condition or disease is going to be reserved to medical doctors. So, really when it comes to, nutrition professionals having their own private practice, you can just make sure that you are not crossing into the scope. You're not doing anything that would, can constitute the unauthorized practice of medicine, right? By making sure that you're not suggesting to your clients or your customers that you do any kind of diagnosing, right? That is a huge one. So want to be careful about talking about, specific conditions or diseases with them, unless you are practicing medical nutrition therapy, but you're still never going to, suggest that you're diagnosing them with a condition or disease. You may refer them to, meet with their physician to get a further evaluation, things like that. But you want to make sure you're avoiding that word diagnose or doing anything that could be construed as diagnosing. Same thing with treating any kind of condition or disease. So unless you are practicing medical nutrition therapy, which we're going to talk about in the next slide, you really want to try to kind of remove your discussions with your client away from their specific condition or disease they come to you with, and kind of take it back to helping their body function at its best, right? And so getting kind of to the root cause of their whatever they're dealing with, and kind of separating them from that identifier of the disease or condition when they work with you can just be really helpful in general. And then, of course, you're not going to be prescribing any kind of specific medications or protocols to treat that condition or disease. So really making sure that you are doing this, of course, when you're working with your clients in terms of your actions, what you're saying to them, and then also being really cognizant of what you are putting on your website or, in your social media post, or perhaps your free guides or handouts. You want to make sure that you are not suggesting that you're doing any kind of these things in any of those areas as well. But luckily, just kind of having this in mind and being aware of it can really help you just be intentional with what you say. And if you're not already doing this, sooner rather than later, you will just get in the hang of it and it won't become very second nature to kind of avoid suggesting or using any kind of these terms. And then, there is the scope of practice of a registered dietitian as well. So, like many of you guys who are RDs or are, in school to become an RD, you are well aware of kind of some of the laws that surround, having that credential. That's a fantastic credential and licensure to have. So, congrats to you if you have it or if you're about to have it. So, kind of there's two different pieces when it comes to what is the scope of practice of a registered dietitian. So first of all is to know that in some states, making individualized nutrition recommendations, so the recommendations that are specific to a person and kind of what they're dealing with, is limited to registered dietitians licensed in that state only. So kind of everything else aside, know that there is that issue. And so this could come up, if you are not licensed in your state, or if you're someone who is practicing virtually and seeing clients in many different states, this is something you want to be aware of. And then there is also medical nutrition therapy, which here we have a definition from the Academy on it, but really it's just going to involve that in-depth individualized nutrition assessment. It's going to be very tailored to manage or prevent a disease, injury, or condition. So this is kind of what I was talking about, that there's a little asterisk here when it comes to treating a condition or disease through nutrition. If you are licensed in that state, you're providing medical nutrition therapy. That is definitely something you can do. But if you are not licensed in a state in which one of your clients resides, you want to be very careful that you are not doing anything that suggests that you're providing this kind of medical nutrition therapy. So like I mentioned, being really cognizant of, not kind of referring to their disease or injury or, whatever condition they're dealing with when it comes to making your recommendations, and really just taking it back and, thinking about it in terms of improving their bodily function, as a whole, and improving the systems of their body, and how they can, improve their liver health or whatever it may be, and kind of separating their specific disease or injury condition from your protocols and from your recommendations is really, really important to keep in mind. And then, so as you guys know, generally there are, state licensing boards that govern kind of the specific requirements of certain states. If you do live in a state which requires licensure, and those licenses are issued by those governing boards. So a little bit of different criteria in each state, maybe some different forms you need to submit, a little bit of different criteria depending on what state you're in terms of how you go about getting that licensure. I'll also note here that, as some of you may be aware, there is the possibility of a compact going into place. I would think, it's probably at least a year or two out, kind of from what I've heard, but it's definitely a potential where states would kind of offer, certain states would offer reciprocity in their licensing to RDs that are licensed in other states. So meaning if you are licensed in your state, it is possible that through the compact, you would have kind of an easier route to get licensed in other states. Like perhaps you wouldn't have to fill out their full application. You might just have to fill out a simple form and submit a much lesser fee to the state to get licensed in that state. So we are monitoring that and hoping for all of your sakes that that does go through, because that would be fantastic. But also to keep in mind that, that is definitely not going to solve all the problems, because we do have some states in which, licensure is not really a thing. And so, how do you go about asking for reciprocity in a state that is not a licensure state? And then also, there's still going to be some administrative burden, that filling out a form, most likely, maybe paying a small fee. So definitely hoping that that goes through, but I think it's still a ways out, and it's not necessarily a perfect fix, but would definitely be a fantastic big step in the right direction. So when it comes to kind of what is the law of your state say, You really want to make sure that reviewing your state law is absolutely critical. So we want to see you guys really take ownership of this issue. Feel like you feel confident enough to review your state statute that you know, or to find it quickly is a huge piece of this. So there are some resources online to quickly locate your state statute, so your state law on nutrition. So this could be, this will go into what kind of license, what do you need to do to pursue licensure in that state, kind of how does your state handle providing individualized nutrition advice? Do you need to be registered in the state to do that? Do you need to be licensed? Medical nutrition therapy, all of those kinds of things are going to be in your state laws. So kind of our favorite place to point people at this time is the holisticcouncil.org. This website that I'm going to show you a map from their website in just a minute, but they are really fantastic because we know a lot of people are kind of working across state lines when it comes to their practice. And we get a lot of questions here on how to kind of go about doing this. So if you're working with clients in states in which you're not licensed, this is going to be an incredible tool for you, because it's really going to look at these laws kind of from the lens of someone who is not licensed, right? Which is going to be the case even if you're licensed. Let's say you're licensed in, Ohio maybe, but you're not licensed in another state and you have clients, you have a lot of clients you're working with that other state. This is going to be kind of the way that you would look to the laws to try to figure out if there's an exemption, or are they a more permissive state in which you don't need to be licensed to provide individualized nutrition advice. So this is just a fantastic resource. And then just know, as we'll dive into just a minute, there are kind of 3 different classifications we'd like to talk about of state nutrition laws. I'll note that many of the bigger organizations have kind of moved away from these type of classifications just because there are so many different in-betweeners, right? So you have some states that are kind of like a red-yellow, you have some that are a yellow-green, right? But can be really helpful, I think, just to kind of have this framework to kind of think about the different types of nutrition laws that are out there. So kind of the most restrictive types of states where you would need to be licensed generally to provide any kind of nutrition advice, any kind of individualized nutrition advice, are going to be those red states. Then there is the yellow classification. So generally, kind of depending on which resource you're looking at, yellow would be something like either they allow for licensure for CNSs perhaps, or they have title restrictions, meaning that that they maybe aren't super restrictive on who can provide individualized nutrition advice, but they do have restrictions on whether you can call yourself a nutritionist or call yourself a dietitian in that state, and unless you're licensed. So those are kind of the yellow states in between. And then there are the states that are the green states, which again, depending on kind of what map you're looking at or how you personally view green states, generally those are going to be the states that are the least restrictive when it comes to laws that govern who can provide individualized nutrition advice to their residents. So just kind of having that framework of those 3 different classifications, I think, is really helpful. So like I mentioned, here are 2 different state maps that are really great resources. So, I will say that this one is from the ANA.org. They used to have this great interactive map on their website. It is actually no longer available, but I'd like to show it just to kind of illustrate that there are differences here in these maps. So definitely don't think if you pull one of them up and you see something is green that you don't need to go ahead and click on it. I would definitely still look into those laws and make sure you kind of understand how they are classifying green states. But also these laws are constantly changing. So a lot of these organizations are just kind of moving away from having these kind of maps because it is a lot to keep up with in terms of figuring out what is the most recently enacted law in that state, because they are constantly changing. Kind of states are moving more restrictive, some states are moving to less restrictive laws. So it's definitely something that's in flux, and we would recommend looking at these laws for the states that are applicable to you, at least twice a year, just to make sure you're kind of up to date on what's happening with them. But this is the map from the Holistic Council, which I mentioned, and it is a really fantastic resource for you. So Hope that these are helpful, and you can definitely still go to this website and check out this map, and it will take you to those laws. The Academy also has some great resources to directly link you to those state laws. So you can definitely check there as well if you're just looking to find your state nutrition laws. But we often get asked, kind of which state's law applies to me. So, there are different kind of things to consider here. So, kind of the first thing is what is the state in which you reside? So, generally speaking, the state in which you reside is going to be the same state that you have your, business address in, also going to be the same state in which you form your business in most cases. So, generally 1, 2, and 3 are the same, but just something to keep in mind that if for some reason you have, formed your business in another state, that could be a factor here, although we definitely don't suggest just forming your business in another state that you don't have any kind of ties to just to feel like you're getting around these laws. That's something I would definitely recommend talking to an attorney in your local jurisdiction about. But generally 1, 2, and 3 are going to be the same. You're generally going to need to look at the state in which you're residing, the state that your business address is in, the state in which you formed your business. Like I mentioned, those are all typically the same state in most cases for most people, unless you've recently moved or something like that. And then you're also going to need to look at which state are your clients located. So, this is something that can be difficult because if you are operating a virtual practice and you have clients in many different states, right, it can be intimidating to think about needing to look at these state laws. But we want to kind of empower you to do that through these resources because of the, generally the laws of telehealth and telehealth principles are going to apply here. So there are some states that have specifically written in kind of telehealth situations, telenutrition situations into their state nutrition laws. There are some states that have not written this in yet, but we can just kind of assume that the general principles of telehealth law would apply, which means you're always looking at the state in which the client resides. So even if you are in Texas, a green state, let's say you're working with a client in Ohio and Ohio is a very, very red state. You would need to consider what are the laws of Ohio when it comes to providing individual nutrition advice. Do you need to be licensed, which in that state you definitely do, to do that. And so, we kind of empower you to think about, I think a lot of people's suggestion how to deal with this, right, is to kind of look at what are the states in which you're most commonly seeing clients, where are most of your clients coming from. Definitely, no matter what state you're in, there are plenty of clients within your own state to serve and to help. But we know that a lot of people, and totally understandably, you want to be able to work one-on-one with clients in other states, and really one-on-one coaching is mostly where these issues come up. Sometimes in group coaching it can come up as well, but more kind of more concerned in the one-on-one coaching environment in most cases. So, definitely kind of consider, is there certain states that you are seeing most of your clients? Can you get comfortable with those state laws? Can you, maybe even consider seeking licensure in one of those state laws if that's somewhere in those states, if that's a state that you see a ton of clients in, you can definitely consider that. There are costs associated there. There's definitely the administrative burden of having to go through the application process. So we totally get that you don't necessarily want to have to do this. But this is also where that holistic counsel map can come in super handy because they have great kind of overviews of the laws in the states that you can go find from their map that look at them all from the lens of someone that is not licensed in that state. And so there are many states in which you might feel like you could fall within an exemption, or maybe it's a state like Texas, which is just generally really permissible to offer kind of individualized nutrition advice. So these are kind of the laws that you can consider, and just kind of keep in mind that telehealth laws are generally going to be applicable in this context, even if the nutrition law does not specifically talk about telehealth yet. We expect for more and more of those laws to kind of capture the current environment and the current kind of, nuances of nutrition and health coaching, and that most people are seeing people across state lines. And so here, I'll kind of mention, like we talked about, we often get questions, about seeing clients virtually across state lines. So there are different considerations here, some of them of which we've already talked about, but of course the laws of your state are going to be important. So if you are living in a red state and you perhaps are not licensed there for some reason, or maybe you are watching and you're not eligible for licensure there, that's definitely going to be something you need to take into consideration. And then if if you're seeing clients across state lines, you're going to want to think about the laws of the state of your client. Like I mentioned, those general principles of telehealth are going to, apply, that you need to look at the law of where your client resides. I understand this complicates things, but like I mentioned, if most people are seeing people, most of their clients are coming from a handful of states, and so this can be a really actually totally tackleable legal issue, and just get comfortable with those couple different state laws and feel comfortable with how you're moving forward there. Generally speaking, enforcement of these types of laws is not super high, but it does definitely happen. And of course, we want you to be in compliance with the laws, kind of regardless of the enforcement environment. And so this can come from the state board, perhaps. They are just taking initiative to kind of look into things more. Kind of another way that the enforcement happens often is that maybe it is not necessarily your client, but perhaps unfortunately a relative of your client or a friend that just does not believe in kind of improving their health through nutrition, maybe doesn't believe in kind of the services that they're providing, and so they may perhaps report you if you are not operating within the scope of your practice or complying with the licensure laws. So just something to be kind of aware of. The fines for these things, range. There are a different kind of levels of these fines that are available, but definitely something we want you to feel confident about and be something that you feel really empowered as a business owner, that you've kind of looked at this issue and feel comfortable with it and kind of have your game plan for how to tackle it moving forward. Your website copy is definitely another place to be really cognizant of what you are saying there. Are you suggesting that you're working with clients in states in which you're not licensed or which you're not authorized under those state laws? So definitely something to consider and to be, to have in your mind when it comes to what's on your website, what are any kind of public facing documents you have, and what are you providing in those documents. Want to make sure that they reflect what you're actually doing in your business and that you are complying with the laws that you are subject to. So kind of go over a couple of practical considerations, because we know that this is a very hard topic for those of you who do work across state lines. So we just want to encourage you to study the laws that apply to you, to really take ownership of understanding the limitations of your scope. It is totally doable thanks to these handy dandy resources we provided and some of these state law maps. And we have a ton of education on this inside our program, which I will talk about at the end of the presentation today. But really, this is something that is totally doable. You need to do a risk analysis. Ultimately, this is a risk analysis that you need to do, as a business owner. Having insurance is really important, to kind of fill in any kind of potential holes in your legal protection strategy, and just to kind of help give you peace of mind in this area. But I do want to note that some insurance providers are not going to cover you if you are acting outside the scope of your licensure or outside the scope of your practice. So this is where it can be really important to work with an insurance broker that really understands your business, or really feel confident that you know what your policy says and know that you're covered for how it is that you're operating your business. This is where using contracts is completely, totally critical to your success here, because we want you to make sure that your client or your customer is really clear on the scope of your practice, that when they come to work with you, they completely understand, what kind of services you're going to be providing, which you can and cannot help them with. Oftentimes, just making sure that you have that kind of agreement and that you guys are on the same page when it comes to what services you can provide and how you can help them is the best way to avoid any kind of potential, issue that may come up where perhaps they think you're going to be providing one thing, then you can only provide another based on the laws that are applicable to you. So really important to have this clearly written in your contracts, and then of course also be acting in a way that shows that you're complying with what you're saying in your contract as well. And then you want to, like I mentioned, pay really careful attention to written documents and those that are generally available to the public. So think about your advertisements, your websites. This is a place where we see people kind of get, noticed by regulators, is that they have something on their website or they've got like an ad going that suggests they are doing something that they should not be doing under their state laws and laws that apply to them. So this is an easy way, just, easy place to make sure that you are don't have anything in your website that suggests you're diagnosing a condition or diseases, for example, or that you're working with clients in a state in which you are not able to without being licensed there, perhaps. So just, something I encourage you to take ownership of. And then also just, using disclaimers frequently and transparently is really important. So in all of the documents we have here at Dotted Lines, all of our contracts, they have tons of the really industry specific legal disclaimer language, making sure that the scope of your practice and kind of exactly what you are and are not doing in your practice is very, very clear. You're not providing any kind of medical advice. You always prefer that people, want them to talk to their physician, that they are not considering or foregoing or delaying seeking medical care because you're working with them, for instance. So lots of very industry specific language and disclaimers you want to have in your contracts to protect you. And so that's a huge reason why we formed Dotted Lines, just to make sure that you guys have this really industry specific language in your contracts to give you these disclaimers that are so important. And then for those of you who are RDs2B, so, congratulations on making your way through your program. But, I know a lot of you may be looking to kind of start building your business now. Maybe you don't want to wait until you're graduated to kind of get things rolling in your business, which is totally understandable. So I thought I'd kind of talk about some, kind of what you may be considering and some suggestions for how you could start depending on your state laws. So if you are considering getting started with one-on-one coaching before you graduate, so you're going to, of course, need to look at the state nutrition laws that you may be subject to. Kind of like I mentioned before, think about the laws in which the state in which you reside. Also think about the laws of of where your client is residing, and then maybe have those title restrictions. So let's say that you are in a state like Texas, which generally does not have any kind of laws on who can practice individualized nutrition, who can give individualized nutrition advice. But also know that even Texas has, restrictions on certain titles, like using dietitian. Obviously, if you're not a licensed dietitian yet, don't use that term. Some states also restrict nutritionists, just depending on what state you live in. And then also, keep in mind that you shouldn't be providing any kind of medical nutrition therapy. And then, of course, you may live in a state, or you may be looking to work with a client in a state that is a red state that requires you to be licensed to provide any kind of individualized nutrition advice. So that is just something you want to consider. We also get a lot of questions from people as to like, can I use the word coach if I haven't, if I'm not like a certified coach, but I am, acting in a coaching capacity with people that I work with. So generally speaking, coach is not a defined legal term. There's not really any kind of like definition of coach in most, state laws. So you're not going to kind of run up against an issue calling yourself a coach. So that could be something that you consider. Even if you don't have like a coaching certification, but of course you're going to want to be, open and transparent with your potential clients and customers on kind of what your credentials are. And so, you could talk about, you could kind of list the program that you're currently in and that you are a student of that program, but you're not going to suggest that you already are a dietitian or that you have any kind of coaching certification. And of course, unless you do have that, but you could definitely consider the one-on-one coaching if you do, if kind of the laws of the states that apply to you work out that may be available to you. Also, just kind of working in more of like an education and focusing on kind of building your community can be really, really helpful. So, if you are looking to have your private practice when you get out of school, maybe you're just a few months out from having your licensure and you want to get that ball rolling, definitely feel like you can get on social media. You can, provide education to people. You can provide information on, whatever it is you want to be talking about, but just be careful that you, are never suggesting, like I mentioned, that you're diagnosing or treating any kind of condition or disease. We always suggest using a very simple disclaimer on your social media post when they offer any kind of nutrition or medical, definitely not medical advice, but nutrition like information. You want to make sure people don't take that as medical advice. So that could be really important to have a simple disclaimer on your social media post. And then, maybe look into different community organizations you could give talks to if they're open to having you come in and just doing some education, being fully aware that you are not yet a registered dietitian, you are still a student. But it'd be definitely really important for you to just disclose openly that you are studying to become an RD, that you're in this program pursuing your master's in XYZ, but you are not yet a licensed dietitian. That would be very important to disclose. I would suggest that you have contracts that disclose this, and that you're also just openly disclosing that with anyone who may be looking to work with you. And then also just making sure that you're treating your business as a real business from day one. So even if you're not, fully into your private practice yet because you're still in school, but perhaps you are, going ahead and building your community on social media. Maybe you have a lead magnet, you have some sort of guide that people are downloading. Maybe you're even working with people one-on-one, kind of like I mentioned before, pursuant to your state law. You definitely want to make sure you have your legal and protection in place from day one, and don't kind of wait until necessarily until you graduated. If you're going to start your business, we definitely suggest going ahead and making sure you're legally protected, because when it comes to legal protection, it's not going to protect things that happened in the past. And we would even, propose that probably your first couple clients may be the bumpiest when it comes to, your kind of their experience with you and just working out the kinks and your processes and things like that. So definitely important to have your legal and protection in place if you are going to start your business in any way. So now I'm going to just kind of dive into, at a high level, kind of our top 3 legal essentials when it comes to just generally having a private practice where you're providing nutrition coaching with people. There are kind of 3 big areas that we'd like to see you focus on. So the first legal essential is going to be, hopefully not a surprise to anyone, but to form a legal entity, right? So, you want to, many cases for solo entrepreneurs who are having a coaching style nutrition business, forming a LLC is, a fantastic option. So LLC is a limited liability company. And, this is something we would always suggest that you speak to your accountant, that if you have a personal attorney, this can be a great place to make sure they understand your business and are kind of on the same page, and an LLC makes sense for you. But for many solo entrepreneurs who kind of have these online coaching style businesses, an LLC is going to be a fantastic choice because it does offer you some serious protection. But we also like to remind people that just forming your LLC is not enough. You need to kind of know how to treat it properly to make sure that you would actually get that liability protection. So kind of at a high level, what a legal entity does. So basically an LLC, for an example, which is a legal entity type, is going to kind of form a fence around your personal assets so that if there were to be a liability come up in your business, whether this was someone, a client or customer sued you, there was a lawsuit, or there's just some other type of liability that came up in your business, if you have formed your LLC properly, you've been treating it properly, which I'll kind of touch on in just a minute, then that, none of your personal belongings, your personal savings account, your personal assets would be subject to claims that come up in your business. So it would just be your business assets. So this can provide a ton of peace of mind for you, just that your personal savings accounts are not going to be at risk. For example, when it comes to having your own business, this can just provide a ton of peace of mind and be absolutely essential to set up in your business. So when it comes to entity type, like I mentioned, LLC for a lot of solo entrepreneurs is going to be a great choice, but we do always recommend that you talk with your accountant, and if you have an attorney, to run that by them as well. It's also a great idea. LLCs are generally very simple to form. So in most states, you're going to have something called a certificate of formation or an articles of organization, which is a very simple state document that you file with your state, and you file that with them. You pay a filing fee. Can depend. Some states are pretty expensive. Some states are not. Just depending on what your state law is. And you also need a limited liability company agreement that you keep in your records. We have that as part of what we offer here at Dotted Lines. But when it comes to observing corporate formalities, so kind of what we're talking about here is making sure that you're treating your LLC as truly separate from yourself. So this is something that is a concern when it comes to being a solo entrepreneur, and in particular, meaning it's just you operating your business. You want to make sure that a court doesn't say, hey, actually, you are not really treating this as separate from yourself. This is kind of like you're commingling your bank accounts. Maybe you're signing documents for your business just in your personal name. You're not really taking it seriously that they could what's called pierce the corporate veil, meaning that you wouldn't get that liability protection for your personal assets if something were to come up in your business. Luckily, this is pretty easy to take care of. We have trainings in our programs on how to make sure you're complying with this, but having things like good records, you keep separate bank accounts, you keep an adequate amount of cash in your business at all times. You are signing documents for your business on behalf of your business in your business name. Things like that can really go a long way. I've kind of put an asterisk here next to put business insurance in place, because sometimes we even talk about this as a totally separate essential, but we definitely consider having adequate business insurance to be a completely essential step in your kind of legal protection strategy. It can help, fill in the holes if there are any holes kind of in what you put in place. But where it really comes into play a lot of times is if you are sued, and let's say that you're having to pay a lot of attorney's fees, and maybe your business doesn't have the money to pay for those yet, but you're going through a lawsuit. That's where a lot of times business insurance can step in and cover those fees for your business. So just absolutely fantastic thing to have in place. Kind of our second legal essential that we'd like to talk about is having this kind of industry specific legal education that helps you be really confident as a business owner, because you are the CEO of your business. You don't have like a legal department who's making sure you're protected like you might at a big corporate job. You kind of have to do it yourself. As we all know, as being an entrepreneur, you're wearing all the different hats. One of those hats is you are your own legal counsel to an extent. You have some general knowledge over how to handle day-to-day legal issues. Issues like scope of practice, which we've dove into a lot here, but you have a grasp on these things, and you kind of have the right resources to get your ducks in a row when it comes to your game plan for like practicing across state lines. There are also business issues that are specific to having an online business. So, as we know, like email marketing laws, a big one, privacy law is a big one. For those of us who have online businesses, you need to have some general knowledge around these things to make sure you feel really confident in moving forward with your business, that you have the right things in place. And then there are, of course, just kind of the day-to-day legal issues that come up. So things like refund request, late payment issues, maybe someone's copying your content, they are sharing, your paid content with people who haven't paid for it. Just general IP protection, principles are really great to know and essential for you to have a business you feel confident about pursuing. We have tons of education on this inside of our program, which I'll talk to you about in just a minute, and even things like email templates to help you take care of these things really quickly. But it is something that we see a lot of business owners kind of have a lot of anxiety about when they haven't gotten a plan in place. It can just be really helpful to spend a little bit of time thinking about what's your plan for these type of things, and kind of felt like you've checked off that box mentally, that you have a plan in place, and it doesn't totally derail your business or your day or your week or your month when you have something come up in your business like one of these issues. So, kind of the third essential is protecting yourself with contracts. So, I'm going to kind of go through this quickly as we are approaching the end of the presentation. But protecting yourself with contracts is a absolutely essential step in making sure you have a sound legal protection kind of strategy in place for your business. So, even more than just protecting your business, we kind of like to talk about like what do contracts do in the first place? What can they benefit, how do they benefit your business? How do they benefit your customers, your clients? So the first thing that they do is they align expectations between you and your client, which is fantastic for many reasons. One of which is that if you and your client are on the same page from day one in terms of exactly what your policies are, what kind of services you're providing, what you're not providing, what resources they have access to, what comes as a part of your package, if you're offering packages, that just really reduces the chances of any dispute coming up in the first place, because you are going to, be on the same page, so that you have that contract to point back to if you ever need to, that kind of points them to all the different provisions that are applicable. And then it can limit your liability, which is fantastic because, as a business owner, you want to always make sure you're planning for the future and that you're planning for, the resources if you have a liability come up in your business. So if it's drafted correctly, if you have the right language in place, you can limit your liability contractually through your contracts, such that you kind of can plan for if there were to be a dispute between you and your client or you and your customer, kind of what is your liability kept at. So it can give you a lot of peace of mind. It can also just protect your ability to get paid, which of course is going to be, top of mind for everyone who owns a business. You want to make sure you can get paid. If there were to be a dispute that came up over payment, the first thing an attorney or collections agency or court would say is like, where's your contract? So if you want to be able to kind of have, everything at your fingertips that you can to ensure you get paid, that if you need to use an attorney, you've got your attorney's fees covered. You can send people to collections. You can charge interest. You can stop working with them. You want to make sure this is clearly outlined in your contract. It's super important. It can also just help you protect your intellectual property. So you can kind of set parameters around what people can and can't do with your content that you provide, whether that's worksheets or handouts or resources, whatever it is. If you have a course, that's super important. You want to have that breach of contract claim, and just also make sure people are aware of what you expect that they are and are not doing with your content that you're sharing with them as part of your program. And then just gives you that peace of mind that you're protected. It makes you look really good. It's kind of your first impression with your clients and your customers that you take your business seriously, that you have put in the time and effort to make sure that they have the best possible experience with you, that everything's outlined clearly. Can just be a great way to kind of set your relationship off on the right foot. So now I'm going to just take a minute, if it's okay with you guys, to talk about, if you are looking to kind of get some of your legal protection in place, how can we help you with that? So we kind of have two different ways that you can work with us through dotted lines. One is we have individual legal templates. So if you just have a one-on-one coaching program, or if you just need website policies, whatever it may be, we offer all of those individually on our website, and every single contract we have comes with a contract template tutorial video where either Kelly or myself walks you through every single line of the contract, make sure you're really confident in what it means, so that when you get those questions from your customers or your clients over what does this provision say, you know how to answer, and that you also know how to kind of complete it quickly for your business. We talk you through the blanks you need to fill in, and make it very, very user-friendly. But we also have our Legally Ready bundle, which is kind of our comprehensive legal protection package, where we have all of our contract templates in there right now. So if you're watching this anywhere around, July 2024, we currently offer everything we have is in the bundle. Probably down the road, not necessarily everything will be included, but you get access to everything from like one-on-one coaching documents to group coaching to website policies to testimonial releases, kind of everything that you would need in a typical online nutrition coaching business you get access to. You would, so, in terms of joining that, you would join, you watch those template tutorial videos that walk you through how to complete the templates. You get the templates up and running for your business, you complete them. And then we have a lot of this program is legal education based. So a lot of education, kind of just like what we did today on industry specific topics. In our health and wellness bundle, we actually have over 40 different legal lessons from everything. If you're just getting started, like walking you through LLC formation, to what kind of compliance reports you need to file, like the Corporate Transparency Act, to how to deal with refund requests, how to handle email marketing laws, website policies, trademarks, kind of all of that, deep dive on state nutrition laws. And then we also have group kind of educational Q&As where we have a community, we come together, we talk about legal issues. We do not give any kind of legal advice. It's all education based, as we did here today. But we have those Q&A opportunities. We can help point you to resources when you have questions or answer questions about the bundle. And then you really just have that peace of mind that you are legally protected, which we love. So this is kind of, again, everything that's included, contract templates for all of your offerings. You get the tutorial videos. You get the, legal educational lessons. You get the 12 months access to monthly Q&As. That's kind of a promotion that we're running with, if you use any of the links that Eileen has here or her discount code, you will get access to that. And then for the lifetime of the program, so as long as we have the Legally Ready bundle, which is we expect to be a very long time, you get access to all of the contract updates we make, which is huge. So if there is a change in the laws, privacy laws, whatever it may be, and we update the contracts, you get automatic access to that, and education updates, which is fantastic because in this space, there are always new laws coming out. Like just this year, the Corporate Transparency Act came out, which impacts every single person with an LLC. There are new compliance requirements you need to comply with. We have a video on that in the bundle that we rolled out to all of our bundle members. It's been really, really helpful for them as they navigate this new legal requirement. But this was a great testimonial from one of our wonderful bundle members, Khalifa. She said that the bundle was really a game changer for her, and she loved that it was super easy to use, and having it all set up from the start was a huge weight off her shoulders. So we loved hearing that. And then, like I mentioned, Eileen does have a discount code. It is code PRANA, but you can get 15% off any of our products or bundles with that code. If you use the code, you can get started with the bundle for $177 a month, and you do get that 12-month access to the Q&As, which is 6 extra months of access as a bonus. And then did want to mention that we have a free webinar coming up, which if you're looking to learn more would be an excellent way for you to kind of get a little bit deeper dive into kind of contracts, day-to-day legal issues, and kind of our #1 mindset shift for kissing the legal scaries goodbye for good. That's something we hope for all business owners. You also get a legal checklist and a mini disclaimer legal template as a bonus if you come to the live webinar. But we'd love to have you at the webinar, just diving into more of the things we talked about today. And I believe Eileen's going to share a link for that as well. So definitely feel free to join us. We would absolutely love to have you. And then if happy to take questions now. So feel free to put them in the chat if you have any questions. And then you can always find us on Instagram at Dotted Lines Contracts. We're always sharing lots of helpful legal tips there. Our email address, if you have any questions after the presentation, is support@dottedlinesco.com. And you can find us at dottedlinesco.com. So happy to take any questions. But thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. This has been super fun, and I hope you've gotten a lot out of this presentation and just feel a lot more confident about tackling specifically scope of practice in your business.
Yeah, Kristen, this was amazing. Thank you so much for all this awesome information. And we actually have a few questions coming in. So I'd love to take, and we can go a little over. It's totally fine. It's just my little lunch break here, so I'm fine. As long as you're okay, Kristen, right?
Yes.
Questions. Awesome. Okay, so what they're asking here is, this person's asking if we find a state that's a green state, is it safe to say that as an RD2B, it's safe to practice there as long as we state we're not yet an RD?
Yeah, so I would say as long as that is truly a green state. So like I mentioned, you want to just be careful that whatever map you perhaps may be looking at, sometimes it'll be a green state, but depending on kind of what are the different, requirements for green for that resource, it could still have some restrictions. So I would just say double check that it's truly a green state, but like for instance, like a state like Texas, who, you don't have to have any kind of licensure to provide individualized nutrition advice, as long as you're really careful about, explaining that you're a student, you're pursuing your master's, XYZ, but you're not a registered dietitian. That would generally be fine for you to do work with people, just like anyone else who's in the state of Texas, that you don't have to be licensed to kind of work with people one-on-one. But you would want to be careful that you are not providing medical nutrition therapy.
Right.
And you want to be careful that you are not using a term or a title that's restricted in that state. Even in a state like Texas, you can't call yourself a dietitian unless you're a licensed dietitian. And there are states that even restrict nutritionist. So I would just be careful with what you're calling yourself.
Yes.
And then, of course, make sure you're not practicing medical nutrition therapy.
Yeah, and that leads into this next question, and it's a little bit similar, but it has a little twist. It says, "What about offering services as an RD2B? Should we only see clients for weight loss that don't have specific medical nutrition therapy needs?"
Yeah, so I would just like kind of like what you mentioned. It sounds like you're already thinking about medical nutrition therapy being an issue. So, definitely you're on the right track there. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of working with people, maybe you're going to specialize in weight loss. Just be really careful that no one thinks you are kind of treating their whatever it is they may be dealing with. If they have high blood pressure or, high cholesterol, or if they've got some condition they're dealing with. You just want to be careful that you are not suggesting you're treating that, and just kind of being more general, helping them improve their overall health and well-being, helping them, kind of infuse healthy habits into their lifestyle. But yeah, it sounds like you're definitely on the right track. You just want to make sure that you are, not suggesting you're like treating obesity or anything like that, just being a little bit more general with your marketing, and definitely how you're talking to clients and putting in your contracts is really, really helpful.
Okay, and that leads us to this next question about contracts. Does it make sense to have it in my legal contracts that I'm an RD2B and that it's allowed to provide nutrition coaching services in that state? I think the person saying, should she put in the actual contract that she's an RD2B and that she is allowed to provide the nutrition coaching in whatever state the client's in?
Yeah, so I always think it's really helpful, and we can have places do this in our contracts, but for you to explain like exactly, kind of what are your credentials when it comes to working with clients. So I think it would be a good idea to put in your contract that you are, a student, you're pursuing your degree in XYZ, but you at this time are not a, licensed dietitian, you're not a registered dietitian yet. I think would be, a really good idea. I wouldn't necessarily think that you need to go into kind of detail as to like, but you live in this state, so you're allowed to. Personally, just preference, I would probably leave that part out, but it's definitely something you could discuss with your client, if they have questions there. But yeah, I would definitely want to put in my contracts if I was studying to be a dietitian, but was not one yet. I would definitely want to explain that, in my contract, and just kind of make sure it's crystal clear and you've got it in writing that they know you're not a dietitian.
Totally. Transparency, right? That's the most important thing. And then last question here that just came in actually. It's an interesting question. It's regarding the yellow and maybe a red state. What they're asking is it possible to provide coaching? Like, let's say this person has a certification in health coaching, or let's just say it could be anybody, right? So can they provide coaching in a yellow or red state? Or is that something that you want to stay completely away from?
Yeah. So kind of different people have different risk tolerances for this, but what we like to kind of educate on is like what do the laws say and what to be aware of. So if it's a state that, like I mentioned, there are states that are some yellow states, but definitely the red states provide that you can't kind of provide any kind of individualized nutrition advice to someone. So, if you're like truly acting as a health coach, perhaps, and you're really just working with like overall instilling healthy habits and helping people, stay active or whatever it may be, that may be fine. But there's, kind of that concern that it is very easy to provide individualized nutrition advice to someone, or, recommendations. Like if, let's just say that they're, trying to deal with weight loss, right? And you're like helping them with those individualized nutrition recommendations, or maybe they have high cholesterol and like your RD brain kicks in and you're trying to help them with like very individualized nutrition recommendations. I would just be careful of doing that in a state that's a red state, or a or a yellow state, kind of depending on what that specific law says. But there are health coaches that are very high level. Maybe they're helping implement a plan already put in place by someone's dietitian or their doctor. They're just like a true coach, accountability partner. If that's, you feel like that's you and that's your role, then that may be something that's permissible. But I would just
Right.
always be very careful about, providing individualized nutrition advice.
In those states, or maybe a group might be okay, like more of like a, or even like a webinar, you know what I'm saying, like an educational session. Do you think that would be, I mean, how would that be if it was
Yeah, I
not?
think that's definitely much, much, much better. And I think in many states that would be like, definitely kind of the route to go. And that's something we kind of encourage people to think about is, just staying away from that like one-on-one connection with people, to
Yes.
or people in a group or on webinars and still educate on topics is a lot better. I'll say there are just like a couple super out there red states that even talk about like not providing education, but the generally speaking, like what's a book or what's a, there are kind of different legal groups out there challenging some of those laws. Not to say they're still in place, but just very, very restrictive states. But that's
Beautiful.
generally much better.
So I guess it's the wise thing to do is, if you're going to be doing anything in like a yellow, especially a red state, probably good idea to run it by an attorney. I think that in that state, maybe. What do you think? In addition, like kind of running it by a lawyer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we know that it can be difficult, if you're trying to offer like a group program, if they have an educational resource that's going to be offered to, if it's going to be a course that you're offering to, people in all 50 states. It's going to be hard to talk to an attorney in every state, but definitely if you have, one attorney you can kind of talk to, or feel like you've really done a kind of deep dive on some of these things, is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
We have a ton of resources kind of helping you know what to look at when you're like looking at these laws, what are kind of the different things to be aware of. So that can be helpful as well. But, knowing that the kind of the farther you can place yourself out of working with someone one-on-one, the better it is. It's going to be from a risk perspective, just because you most likely aren't going to be providing that kind of individualized nutrition advice.
True. Yeah, very good. Very true. Kristen, thank you so much. This was amazing. And we'll should do it again in the future.
Yes, would love to. Thanks for having me, Eileen. This has been really fun.
Really
So
fun. All right. Well, everybody have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. All right.